Welcome back to Living Resonance. I'm Monifa, and today we'll be exploring the cosmic current of the gene keys and the lunar cycle so you can cultivate your voice, live your genius, and weave your legacy in harmony with the current frequencies. Now, this transit, we're currently experiencing the lunar phase of a full moon in Aries, which is Gene Key 48, as well as Human Design Gate 48. And we are experiencing the themes of inadequacy, resourcefulness, and wisdom. This is the genius of the void. Knowledge is power. Yes and no, right? Which is why this energy is called wisdom. So we're going to use quantum human design, Karen Curry's Parker translation of human design. And she calls this wisdom. She calls this wisdom, not knowledge, wisdom, right? For a reason, because knowledge is something we kind of just pick up and gain it from the external. Wisdom is from internal experience, right? And so that's the first part of what she talks about this energy as, which is just being able to garner, to understand, to connect with, to use, to have an ability to use your inner experience, your life experience, so that it is something that is actually useful. So as to be able to use it. If you're not using it, then it's not as much wisdom. Okay. And kind of the goal here, because it's the full moon, is to release anything that doesn't allow us to do that. So is it, some of us are rewriting our life experience so we can use it for our lives and for our service, for what we are doing to help and serve others. So that is a big part of what's going on today. So what most people have a challenge with regarding this is just trusting what they know as experience. Again, that's kind of why I titled this because I grew up with that phrase. My husband's literally going through Schoolhouse Rock videos last night. And this was one of their intros. I'm not sure if it was always their intro, but it was like knowledge is power, right? And I think yes, but I think in this information age, first off, we've noticed that there can also be a downside to having so much or too much knowledge, but also that without the use of that knowledge, is it power? We can know a lot of stuff, but if we're not actively having it be part of our life and experience, is it power? And that's my question for you. You can tell me in the comments, okay, how you feel about that. And what parts of you are still enamored with knowledge. I'm a lifelong learner, and often kind of, it's kind of a thing between my husband and I where I'm always looking for more information. And he's always like, chill. Like it's not very little of it is useful anyways, right? Um, he's definitely an inner wisdom person, so he lines right up with this one. On the gift side, right? So optimally, you want to be able to have a quiet confidence about your inner wisdom. You want to be able to act on it without needing permission from externals. So I often talk about this as, for a lot of us, we got our certificates, our degrees, our diplomas. We were okayed by a school board. We were okayed by a medical board. Anything to give us the authority to use our wisdom or knowledge. Some of us hadn't made it to the wisdom when we got our degrees, right? So there is that. That is that part of the components, because if you need confirmation from the outside, then we're not in the activation of this energy that is available to you right now, right now. Okay. And that's kind of how you know if you are tapped in, right? It's if you really keep looking for outside confirmation instead of letting your own voice be enough, which is what we talk about on this channel. That it's more than enough, and it can, and if it's not enough yet, it'll get you there. It'll get you to the point where you'll feel that it's enough, truly, um, and felt. So the unbalanced version of this is that we're trying to strive or striving. So to me, that's the difference. A lifelong learner is just interested in learning, right? Not always about striving so they can prove themselves or be better, which is the unbalanced version of this. That you're gathering your knowledge to prove you're worthy, whether that's of how you want to, what you want to receive, and the worthiness of that, and or if it's really to kind of say, okay, I'm ready, school board, you should pass me now, right? I'm ready, public, you should trust me now. I'm ready, right? So it's such, somehow proving you're ready, right? You're proving your worth. So if you're doing that, or if you're spending a ton of time preparing without just doing what you have to do now. In other words, you're not, if you know you want to do something and you think you have to learn something else first, then you're probably outside of your wheelhouse. Either it's not time yet for that thing and you should be focused on something else because there's always something up for now. So, or it's up for now and it doesn't matter what else you learn. You can always apply that or add that in later, but it's not necessary for you to go and get started right now. And that's what I see a lot of my clients experience because we're all lifelong learners. And a lot of times they're waiting on information to move forward. And I always say that new education is about what's coming next and not what is up for now, right? So it's not that no information is needed for you to know, to trust what you already know. Get what I'm saying? And we'll talk about it more as we get into the gene keys. But it's basically that, and that you need to keep questioning or over analyzing what you want to do, instead of just moving forward with what you know and aligning to action with how you do it. Okay. Moving into the gene keys. All right, so we have the gene keys. What I love about using both of these, Karen Curry Park is going to like tell you how to get things done. Gene keys is going to tell you why it's this way, why this energy is like that, why we like this, why we like this as a humanity. Okay. And so Gene Keys is like shadow of inadequacy. So in the shadow or in this inadequacy feeling, the gift is resourcefulness. So we always feel that we are resourced in what we're getting done. And the city, SIDHI, is wisdom. So that's if this energy was experienced by the whole and that we were in constant collaboration in this energy. There's a lot to cities, so we're not going to get into it right now. But I'd like to give a short kind of explanation for those who haven't visited the Gene Keys before. So the title of this chapter for Mature to Ride is The Wonder of Uncertainty. The Wonder of Uncertainty. I love this. I keep thinking the whole time I was reading this stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what's up. I've been talking about this with clients. I've been doing this. I just started reading the book from Dr. Sue Morter called The Anatomy of Awakening. It's great. I feel like I don't know. I feel like some people may miss some stuff in there, but it is really, really, really good. If you feel like you're ready for that kind of thing, look at, you can read the summary and see if that's something you're up in your wheelhouse, but it's good. If you've been doing a lot of self-work, I think I think this is like that graduation book. Let's graduate. Let's stop talking about things in the old way we used to talk about it. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. And that's part of what we're talking about here is this feeling of wonder is what she speaks of as one of the kind of the spirit, our true self experiences that we experience in this body. And wonder is one of the ways you can access that. And if you can do that in uncertainty, that is literally like what she talks about in the book. Is literally how we are built to work. We actually have more things that tune into the the sensing and the intuition of what is than we do of what the information can tell us, right? So how much the brain can tell us, even how fast the brain can tell us something that we know. Our hearts are faster. That's one of the things we've learned over this last decade, and that's one of the things that I think still we have to acclimate to. We still keep thinking that we're going to figure things out. And Gene Keys is one of those places where it keeps reminding you, yeah, it's not really about that. It's not really about that. So this is the ring of matter for those who follow the codon rings. This is how we create. It's something that she emphasizes also in the book, and it's how we create faster than time and space. So manifestation, right? And it's powerful. Like just the way she talks about it is powerful, but it's right here we're talking about that what is matter is part of what we are discerning, right? And we get to experience it when we have discerned it. Kind of the feelingness of marrying those two things that I've been learning about. Yeah, if I ever talk about something you're just like, that makes no sense, Monifa, please ask me. Please ask me in the comments. Keep me on track because I tend to get into my own space around these things. So, as the shadow, inadequacy is coming from this place of questioning the application of our emotions. The title of the shadow portion of inadequacy in the book is EQ and IQ. So we know what EQ is, emotional intelligence, right? IQ we know is intelligence quotient, right? So EQ is emotional quotient, right? So what for a long time, at least when I was growing up, they were saying that emotions kept you from thinking. So they were saying you shouldn't be emotional, you should be logical. And there was either or. They weren't trying to have you do both. Now we know better. you know, we know, well, do we? Do we know better? Because we should know better. By now we should know better. If you do not have the emotional capacity to be present, then you don't have your full mental capacity. You don't have whatever intelligence you think you hold, right? So your emotions can keep you from your intelligence, and your intelligence is nothing without an emotional intelligence, right? Without that emotional quotient. And so that's something that we talk about in the Venus sequence and the gene keys, like what parts are playing a role in how you're allowing yourself to use your full capability of thought and application, like in real time, right? Um, so that's important because a lot of us are getting that confused. What is the difference between knowledge and wisdom? When do you need either or in how and in what ways are you applying either or? Um, I am a preferrer of wisdom, but I do think knowledge is useful for new input when we're changing beliefs and or trying to reacclimate, much like this information about how emotions are very important when it comes to intelligence, right? Once we have that new information, how do we allow ourselves to live differently? Once we have that understanding and we're living it, that becomes the wisdom part, right? So knowledge is a step in wisdom, right? So that is kind of part of it. And what we want to talk about here in the shadow is why are we afraid of not knowing? Okay. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid will happen if you don't get that new information? If you're one of those people who likes to like, oh, well, let me just learn this one other thing before I do it. Let me just do this, like, let me just like read this other book before I do it. I want to do these things and then I'll be ready. If that is ever you, I'm not saying it's ever me. I'm just saying if it's ever you, then What are you afraid will happen? Richard Rohr talks about how knowledge has been a form of control for a long time, a long time. So partly it's how we control our own environment, control our own fear. We think that we will be less afraid if we know more. And traditionally, for a lot of us, that has been true. We got our accolades from knowing more, right? So we know, well, at least if we make an attempt to learn everything possible, they're gonna say, "Good on you for learning that, for reading that book." We're gonna at least get that level of recognition. No, we weren't questioned whether we actually applied the information if it was useful to us. It was not part of how we were educated. And unfortunately, I think in large part, is still not how we're educated. Um, and so that's a problem. That's a problem. But also as a form of control within the dynamic of social understanding and and in the economy. So a lot of businesses, a lot of people are basically saying I this information is how you will stop being afraid. You'll stop being afraid if you have this thing because it's backed by this information, science, whatever, whatever, whatever. Whoever gets to give the check mark on what's good information and not, right? Whereas we understand with a feminine balance and feminine wisdom that a lot of that is from self-experience and it's this accumulated, garnered knowledge. That's the void. That's the void. It's this, they mean a lot of, if you think of the oracle, of tradition of mythology, and I may not, and there's actual places. So who know? I mean, is it mythology? Whatever. And or just this understanding, like even a mother's or grandmother's wisdom. They may not have any book knowledge. A lot of us have heard of cultures where they never went to school, but they had their their children and grandchildren walk away with some of the greatest pieces of wisdom that has allowed them to act in successful ways in their lives, right? And so what's the difference and why do we feel like we need one and the other one is something that if it's not okayed by a board isn't useful or valuable? Right. And we have to ask these questions because the economy will change and it is changing. And if we don't understand where true value lies, then we are going to have some problems. We're going to have some problems. Okay. So I want you to ask these questions for yourself because it'll make you more responsible in the marketplace, but it'll also make you more responsible with what you have to serve with. So what wisdom are you passing on? We're getting to that. I'm ahead of myself again. Gene Keys is going to get into that. So I've said it a lot of times. If you're looking for a guarantee, you're looking for somebody to lie to you. Nobody's guaranteed anything, including your life. So how is somebody guaranteeing you results? How is somebody guaranteeing you that something is going to work for you forever or for however long the guarantee lasts, right? Like, Mm, it's a dream. It's a dream of security, is what Richard Rudd calls it. So let's talk about what's actually valuable, like in the usefulness of it, in the and how we choose to use it. Is it actually in support of who we are, or is it taking us off track of the truth of how we function and think and get things done? Yeah, which is again a lot of what we do in vocal alchemy. I know, but it's this every time I say the name of my program, I'm like nobody's gonna understand how vocal anything has to do with any of that, and I get it, but it's a system, right? And that's what I'm working on. Is I'm actually helping people understand that the system of vocal alchemy. And the reason I named it that was because it's inspired by voice, because it is an act of creation of something from nothing. And then it was this revelation, a download of my own wisdom of how I understand and see and perceive things to be true or not true, right? And it just is, just this whole piece of how do we how do we get back to our own truth of how we create instead of continuing to model other people and things that are less efficient for how we work and what's different about us and what is special about us, right? So all of that, I don't know how I got onto this because I guess everything ties together so well, right? But essentially the nature of this is that when we were growing up, this is the EQ is a place between, oh, I guess I'll have to use my other recording. The EQ is the place between our seventh and 14th year. So when I was reading this, I was like, ooh, so this is this kind of feelingness of inadequacy in this shadow is something that's developed in a this kind of very delicate time of our lives. And I thought, well, how many of us grew up as latchkey kids who have a very strong sense of this thing? I looked it up and like I have 48 in my human design chart in Pluto, right? And I was just like, oh, okay. I was like, I don't have this key. But when I looked it up, I do have it. And I have it in Pluto. And I'm wondering, because Pluto is a long, is there for a while, right? So there has to be several years of people before me and behind me that are experiencing this, being a latchkey kid is a part of this feeling. Not being able to deal with your emotions, not being able to, is part of it. But I think also just kind of like the latchkey nature is we were responsible for ourselves for several hours during a time where we probably were a little hungry, probably a little bit questioning our own motivations for wanting to do certain things and being around our friends and getting our homework done, all those kinds of things without kind of any emotional support, right? Um, and so I know for me, it hit me because I was like, I never feel fully secure when I cook. I always feel like I need a lot of help. I need like 3 or 4 recipes so I can find my way of doing it. And then I need like space because if I don't have it, I'll like not, I'll miss something or I'll mess something up. It's just one of the things I have in my head, and I'm wondering how much of that feeling of inadequacy around cooking may come from having to do it before I knew how to do it, right? And so I think, and I not that I cooked when I was a kid, like if it wasn't already in a box or in the fridge, like it wasn't happening, right? But still that kind of component, and that's still to this day, like it's still easier for me to just pull out something or make do than it is for me to sit down and figure out what kind of meal I'm going to cook, right? So how many of us are like that? How many other things kind of play that factor during that age? Anyways, I feel like that's a good question to ask for ourselves. And the conditioning among society again is that emotions undermine intelligence instead of properly being with our emotions, increasing our intelligence, increasing our ability to discern and act in aligned action, right? So the truth is that it does increase that ability. Not only that, but it increases the co-working ability. If you're talking about any space that has to, more than one person has to get something done. Without emotional intelligence, this is not going to happen. More and more businesses are understanding that in their leadership. You have to have some sense of emotional intelligence. You have to have some sense of intuition. You have to have some sense of these things they said were not real, much less useful when we were growing up, right? Anyway, this whole thing comes to this fear of being inadequate, that we won't have enough information or ability to get something done. And this is a quote it's a long one that I got from Richard Rudd about this, which is ultimately, we humans are a part of the mystery of the universe. And there are places where the mind is not destined to travel. Every human being must eventually turn inward and look into our deepest fear, the fear of the void. When we gather our courage and make that leap, we will discover something wonderful. The void is not empty and cold, but warm loving, and bursting with the light and wonder, with light and wonder. And this quote, I specifically wanted the whole thing because, again, this is so much of what I've been re reintegrating into my system from the information from the book from Dr. Sue Morter. It's this understanding that it's not that not knowing something is not a reason to fear, and it's not it's actually the way we access our deepest knowledge, right? When we don't know something, then we have to trust ourselves. When we truly trust ourselves, we're able to function in magnificent ways, right? And so the programming partner for this key, for those who are interested, is in the chart, it would look like an opposition. So the other side of this axis is control, which is the 21 in the gene keys, which is about wanting to control your life so you aren't thrown off by your emotions. Does that sound familiar to anyone? 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 I'm always my hand because that's just I can't even I can't even tell you how true that is. Um, and the gift of that opposition is authority, which is basically trusting your inner self, like trusting your own ability to get things done and lead, right? Which is like my whole life, which is like my work, which is why it's my work, obviously. Obviously, it's partly why I do what I do because it's about me being able to self-lead and get the things that I want to be seen, uh, that I think should be seen out into the world. Yeah. So, yeah, how do we know this is activating our lives? I think I've given a couple questions and examples, but let's keep going into the repressive side of this energy in the gene keys, which Richard Rudd calls bland, ducking your head and giving into fear. So basically, this is just trying not to face life, facing things that leads to just burying your head in the sand. So, a lot of life is actually going to keep testing you on this so that you experience the things you're here to experience in life. Anybody? Anybody? And then when you have the experience, yeah, then a lot of our natural reaction is to, again, duck our heads into the sand so we don't, we still, like, so we, like, I don't even want to know when the next scary thing is happening. And again, this made a lot of sense to me. I'm like, oh, that is what I do. I do that a lot. I have done that over my life. That's one of the reasons I ran into what I believe. I believe one of the reasons I ran into my anxiety problems. And, again, that's what I help people to move past anxiety and overwhelm, feeling truly confident and unshakable in public and doing the things that we're passionate about. So even if it's really personal and really vulnerable, being able to be confident anyways, right? So I'm telling a lot of personal stories, but being able to talk about it so that other people can be served by it, that's part of it, right? So, so yeah, so I've seen myself do that, and I think it led to my liver cancer. I think that, that was a long time ago. Not long. It was 2019. And so, yeah, so I overcame that, I believe, because I ended up going into these spaces of fear. And on the reaction side, so those are some examples. On the reaction side, it looks like being unscrupulous. And these people are facing their fears and then they're projecting their, well, and the desire not to face their fears, I should say. They're projecting their fears onto others. So they are pointing other people's fears and inadequacy out, and they tend to feed kind of that feeling of inadequacy. They tend to, again, like some of the marking signs that it'll point out what you don't have yet, right? And what we have to discern within ourselves is like, is that something I actually want or need for what I want to experience in my world? And a lot of times the answer is no. So sometimes the answer is yes, which so it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't necessarily love that he called this unscrupulous. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but if it's not, again, something you want, you need that will personally help you in acting and moving forward in a real way, then you don't need it, right? Um, so yeah. And so, but these people, I guess he's talking unscrupulous because he's saying people actually are feeding this general paranoia, and some of them are doing it on purpose in order to gain control, and that's unscrupulous, right? So, we're talking mostly about like politics and stuff like that. I think that's where he's coming from in that area. And he says in order to move into this gift, it looks like parenting, and I love that, and I don't no, I don't because I don't have any kids. So I'm like, what about me? And I feel like my first response was, so I have to so I don't get an opportunity, but my children get an opportunity if I do my own personal healing and emotional work. If I learn how to heal my emotional body and how I deal with my emotions, then we can, my children will have a chance. But this is why we talk about, I think, so much in the self-help industry of self-parenting. Obviously it's not over for you. You can heal your own emotional body and live in the genius, but also it doesn't take healing. That's the part that I kind of backed up on. I don't feel like you have to heal from this. You have to be willing to sit with it, which he gets back to in the gift, right? So he doesn't leave it out. He just doesn't give us actual evolution. Like, but the evolution is, which what we have talked about is sitting in the void. And all of last month was about being in the void. If you didn't watch the two previous new moon and full moon from the March, literally that energy was all about living with nothing, with no external reinforcement. And you tell me, how did you experience that last month? You tell me in the comments, and I want to know. All right. So, in the gift of resourcefulness, you trust yourself enough to feel the fear. So, feeling your emotions. Yeah. We've talked about this a bit in the last couple of decades. Yeah. Yeah. Feel your emotions and that not trying to throw away the bad ones. Yeah. The fear is leading you to the understanding of how to move past your own patterns. And that, again, is the main point of Dr. Sue Morter's book, which I think, I mean, I think she's brilliant. I think she is awakened. So she does have kind of an inside track into the movement of energy and all this. But how perfect is that her book was released this month? No, no, not Miss. Yeah, well, last month. It's March for me. Um, so it was released about 2 weeks ago. So in that void, she released this book about sitting there and getting your goods, getting your true spiritual self online. Yeah. Um, so if you do that, then that trust to live through the fear, live through the uncomfortability of what's you don't know, will lead to a deeper trust. And again, this is how it works. And this is like even my work is very much in line with Dr. Sue Morter's work. And every time I read something from her, I get goosebumps because it's like, oh my God, that is so much what I've been trying to teach people. So she's a spirit sister of mine, in my opinion. Finding the exact support you need, whether that's from people, and the truth that we are truly powerful when we bring our resources together. Because one of the beautiful things about this gift is understanding that depth of wisdom is comes when people tap into it. So it's really an act of service and love when we are using that depth of wisdom. And yeah, and that's where true service comes from. It's from this thing that only we can give, only the way that our soul puts that thing together, right? And it may not, like I know there's all kinds of other products, so I'm always trying to think about other for everybody else. But this is the truth of that. The truth of that, even if it becomes something material, that it's what only you can give, and in the way that you want to give it, in the way that people can access it from where you are, whether that's mentally, or physically, or spiritually. Right? So where you are is perfect. You do not have to know more stuff. There's somebody who needs to hear it on that level if you feel like it's not, highfalutin enough yet. Some people just need it straight, you know? Your wisdom is more than enough. And he also talks about how this can be a way to tap into the new levels of energy within our society. So instead of getting it from fossil fuels and all these non-renewable resources, we can start using something that doesn't require ignition, does not require blowing stuff up, which I think again is something that we're understanding is a masculine paradigm and it doesn't have to live there. We can live in a better balance, right? So there may be something that's coming across the line here where we understand we don't have to make something ignite or fire in order for us to pull the energy and to use it for whatever we need it for as our societies get larger and larger with more and more AI. All right, so the City of Wisdom is about groups of people coming together to accomplish great feats in peacetime. So a lot of our big shifts as humanity up until now have been through conflict, war, famine, huge hardships. And this time, you were saying maybe not this time. And that's one of the reasons I actually made the loop. It took me forever today to get this done because I went into this whole thing about, okay, what is the Pluto? What is the Pluto generation? Who are we? Right? Because I do believe that when we are all activated on our purpose, sharing our knowledge, sharing our wisdom, sharing our gifts, that we will not have to go through a World War III. We don't need to. We don't need to do it. Okay? It's not necessary. All right, quickly, hopefully, if I can do this quickly. The journal questions. I always think this is going to be short. I really thought I only have like 2 sentences. What could I possibly say? I don't have that many notes. Anyways, journal questions. These are from Karen Curry Parker, Quantum Human Design. I was trying to get rid of some, but they're all good. So there's a lot here. First question. Where in my life am I still feeling, oh, where in my life am I still waiting to feel ready before I will allow myself to act, speak, or share? That's question number one. Question number two. What life experiences have shaped the wisdom I carry today? Question number three. What stories have I inherited or internalized that tell me I must know more or be more to be worthy of fulfillment? Question number four. In what ways might I be using the pursuit of knowledge as a distraction from embodying what I already know? Question number five. If I truly believe I was wise enough right now, how would I show up differently? So all that's important. All that's important. I want to invite you to live in your myth. We're doing a workshop series. The next workshop is vocal alchemy. It's how I literally have a process that helps you move through these things in real time so that we're not wasting time. But we're also building our skills and our ability to speak what we love, what we know, what is important for now, and so that we can make an impact and be the change we want to see in the world. So there's that. And then, of course, I have my offer from Gene Keys on Gaia because Richard Bryd wrote it. And so he knows what he's doing when he talks about it. It's on there and he does a great job. Gaia does a great job. If you haven't experienced Gaia, like try it out. It's great. It's great. It's good stuff. All right, guys, I will see you on the next one.